Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first official episode of the Stay a While podcast. Now, in this episode, there is a topic, a very easy one to start off with, and one that's very widely known, but is just endlessly entertaining to just not only think about, but talk about also, as there are so many little weird things to think about, and that topic is dreams. Now, we've all had dreams before. I believe that everyone's watching this has had a dream at some point. And you've definitely probably wondered to yourself at some point, like, what does this mean? Why do I dream the things that I do? And this topic is perfect because there isn't a exact down to perfect science explanation as to why the human mind makes us imagine these fake scenarios in our sleep. But first, to like kind of get to it, let's first like try to wrap our heads around like the different kinds of dreams. Of course, we've all had those dreams where when we wake up, you try to remember it just as much as you can, but no matter what you do is that you can just never quite remember the details of it, which is probably the most common form of dream that most people will get. And then in your deep sleep, which is also called, I believe, the REM sleep, is when the really intricate dreams happen, and these ones are usually the ones that you will remember when you wake up. And the other ones are lucid dreams, when you realize that you are in a dream. Because most of the time, you will never realize you are in a dream until you wake up. And even sometimes when you wake up, the dream was so real that it felt like it actually happened, and you kind of question yourself whether it did happen or not. But lucid dreaming is when you realize you are in the dream and that you can control it pretty much, as whatever you think of will happen in said dream. And we'll get into all the properties of what these dreams do afterwards, more in depth. And then there's the other side of dreams, which are less present. These are called nightmares, which we've all had bad dreams, right? We've all had something when we were younger, mostly. We've all had a bad dream. Night terrors, which is basically a more sudden and intense version of a nightmare. And then there's lucid nightmares, which is nightmares where, yes, you are lucid for them. However, you still really cannot control what happens in these ones, despite it being related to lucid dreaming. So, to start off, there are many, many different reasons why people believe that we dream the things that we do. And there's many different, things that happen. A very common one is that many people believe that you dream for a reason. As when you do dream, there have been multiple people who have recorded that something that they've dreamed of that seemed very real actually ends up happening at some point in their lives. And I find that really interesting because, of course, there couldn't be a way that dreams would predict something like this. However, the coincidence almost feels too perfect, especially when they describe it. Now, what I will say is that I could never confirm whether these stories are real or not. However, it is something to think about. And back onto the topic of these kind of familiar dreams. When you get a dream that feels just so real that when you wake up, you feel relieved, for example, that whatever happened in there did not happen, or it just felt too good to be true, and once you awaken, you're left with like this empty feeling, just this feeling of, I suppose sadness is the best way to explain it, that it didn't end up being real. And dreams are often, and these kinds of dreams are often described as either being at the very back of our subconsciousness. This is one of the most complex parts of our brain working here. Say, for example, the dreams that are very, very pleasant and that are so real and so too good to be true are basically filled with some of your deepest desires, I suppose is the best way to say it. Stuff that you really want or need in your life. And so that when you're dreaming, your mind kind of replicates that, brings it to life as you're sleeping. As for the other one, that's the other side, which would be, what you're afraid of or stuff that you're embarrassed about, because we've all had dreams like that too. Always stuff that you bury deepest at the back of your mind is usually what you're going to be dreaming about. As well, if you can remember your dream, then most people will believe that, hey, this is very personal to me. This is something that I don't think about a lot, but this did just bring it back. And another thing is to lucid dreaming is that there are many weird properties when it comes to lucid dreaming. There's a couple things that to follow, because lucid dreaming is something that you can actually learn to do, believe it or not. I do not know how to do it. I've only ever had about one lucid dream, although I still remember it. And there are some things, because when you're in a lucid dream, if you can think, and if you start thinking dark thoughts, or if you start thinking in weird thoughts, then your lucid dream can actually quickly turn into a lucid nightmare. Another way is that looking at anything that where you could see yourself has weird properties inside of dreams, such as a mirror, for example. Now, it's not quite sure why this happens in your dream. It's just something that I suppose something just doesn't work when it comes to that. And that can actually quickly turn your lucid dream into a lucid nightmare as well. Another reason why people believe we dream is due to the fact that it's the mind getting creative per se. It just takes a bunch of stray thoughts and kind of puts them together, which is why sometimes you might have a dream that is just so weird, so confusing that when you wake up, you're not even sure what happened, because at the time it makes sense. When you're within the dream, as long as it's not a lucid dream, most things will make sense when you think about it. But after you wake up, you believe, what just happened? None of that made sense. Which I myself have not had many like this, but I have had some friends who have told me some very odd dreams in a very funny sense, where they just do not make sense. And here's another thing, nightmares. Now, nightmares seem very straightforward with the way they work. It just takes your fears and then puts them into a dream. However, there are very many different kinds of fears, and something that's very common that shows up is phobias in dreams. Now, this might all seem very obvious, because obviously phobia is something you're scared of. But I would say that when I used to have nightmares quite a bit when I was younger, it was always something to do with heights. I'm still afraid of heights. So that's why I believe that, or that's why phobias are a big part of nightmares. And another thing is that, especially when you're younger, if you see something that's quite scary, it's always going to stick with you, or it's going to stick with you for a long time, because your brain is not quite fully developed yet. So it's stuff like that sticks with you, and especially if it's particularly frightening, it's going to you're going to re-see it a lot within your mind, which is why when you dream, then it also starts to reappear once again. and pretty much manifests itself within your mind. But then again, there's also another thing about the subconscious that's very interesting, which is a dream catcher. Which dream catchers are said to be able to catch all the bad dreams that you might have at night. Which, I mean, even I myself have had a dream catcher before, and I kid you not, I had not had a bad dream since then. Which isn't to say that there isn't a explanation for it. Although I would not be the only one who has had an experience like this. But regardless, it's just a funny thing to think about where when you're told something, especially when you're young, you can kind of trick your mind into doing it. But then again, but even after all that said, dreams are still very enigmatic things that still don't make sense. Because sometimes a dream just cannot be explained. It can be something that you have never seen before in your life. And for some reason, it appears within your dreams, even though it shouldn't even really apply to you. And another thing is reoccurring dreams. Say something has happened to you that is particularly good, or perhaps particularly scarring, then your brain will constantly repeat this dream every single night. Again, it's all a part of your subconscious mind, which is one of the most interesting parts of the brain to me, with the ways that it works. And there are so many other aspects of dreaming that couldn't even be covered all in one sitting, as they're just so complicated that we'll probably never have an answer for sure on the true reason why we dream. However, personally for me, to end this all off, I believe that the reason why we dream is mainly due to the desires of our subconscious or the greatest fears of our subconscious. I believe that is the best explanation for them. But then again, what do you think about this? You can let me know down in the comment section below. And I think that'll conclude the very first episode of the Stay a While podcast. This episode was all about dreams. And I hope to see you in the next one. And it's there where I hope that you'll stay a while.